Okay, can everyone hear me? Is that good? Okay, good. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Welcome. If you wouldn't mind taking a seat, we're going to do a quick presentation, and then we'll do a little demonstration of an outreach tool that we have, and then we will go into Q&A. But thank you for taking the time to come out for the Transit Plan Open House. My name is Doug McIntyre. I'm the Senior Transportation Planning Manager at the city, and we're actually really excited to have to kick off this project, our transit plan, which is the first transit plan that the city of Sammamish has had. So we're very excited. I'm going to take a moment to introduce our team, and then we'll do some slides, and then go for it. So Sarah Keenan over here.
Yes, hello. I'm Sarah Keenan. I'm the project manager on the consultant side with DKS Associates, and I'm a transportation engineer. And I'm here with Kendall as well.
I'm going to go from here. I'm Kendall Flint. I'm the task manager for public engagement, and we'll be playing with some fun interactive tools a little bit later, but happy to see everybody here.
Lindsay, would you like to go ahead?
I'm Lindsay Channing. I'm a transportation planner here for the city.
Good evening. I'm Audrey Starcy. I'm the Public Works Director for the city.
Okay, thank you. And that's our team, the main core people involved in the project, and will be the main point of contact for you as we progress through this. So with that, I'm going to go back actually one slide to our agenda for tonight. So again, thank you for coming out. We are going to go over some background information for the project. We are then going to talk about existing conditions. So that's kind of the first milestone that we've hit in this project. Of course, you always want to start with what do you have, and kind of help us identify some of those opportunities and constraints for the project. We'll go over the schedule, and then we'll do that demonstration on how to use, it's called Social Pinpoint. It's a really cool mapping tool that allows you as the resident to, on a map, pin exactly a location that you're concerned about and then give us really specific feedback. You can even attach photos to it. So it helps us to understand what does the community care about, what are, again, those opportunities and constraints for the work that we're going to do. Okay, so let's get into it with a project background. So a question just kind of basically to start off this whole thing is, what is a transit plan? We know that there's a whole bunch of different kind of levels of understanding of what transit is in general, and what are we talking about when we say transit? We're talking about light rail, bus, et cetera, et cetera. So the way that we're defining it is, at least for this project, it's a comprehensive approach to understanding how transit serves our community, and then in more detail, how it can be improved to meet our current and future needs. One of the great things about this plan is that while the city of Sammamish does not operate any transit, we do coordinate really closely with King County Metro and Sound Transit, who do operate transit in our region. So this plan is going to give us some really concrete data and concrete strategies to move forward to improve the service that we have in conjunction with King County Metro and Sound Transit. So a main kind of point about this plan is that there's three components to it, just really broadly speaking. We have a service component, and that's really talking about, again, those current and future needs for transit service. We have a capital component, which when we say capital, we mean the investments in our system. What are the things that the city of Sammamish can do, to improve transit access, transit reliability, those kinds of things. So that might be something like better sidewalk access to bus stops, better amenities at bus stops. Those are the things that we can influence. We can't necessarily change how the service is run, but we can do things to impact the quality of service. And then finally, the policy side of it. So as you can imagine, we deal a lot with policy at the city, and that's where kind of the rubber meets the road for us, where we need to understand what are those gaps in our existing framework that we need to address. So are there things that we can do to really call out future strategies for us to improve, again, transit service in Sammamish? So the good thing is the timing of this is really important, because the work that we're doing right now is going to feed into a parallel process to update our comprehensive plan, which is currently underway. And so the work that we do now, we're going to develop policy recommendations that will feed directly into our transportation element in the comprehensive plan, which is the main policy document that the city has. So it's really good timing. This is a really applicable time to be working on this. So with that being said, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into those three pillars of the project. So in this slide, we're going to talk about the service side of it. So again, a big focus of tonight is the existing conditions. It is really important to understand what do we have as a community currently, and that helps us identify those, again, gaps. What are the areas that we need to improve? We also, in that middle part of the table, we're going to be focusing on what we call level of service measures. So really what that is, it's performance measures for how transit operates in the community. We're actually just starting that conversation in the plan, so it's kind of in the early stages, but we're trying to build out some guidelines so that when we look at projects in the city, we can understand how that might impact our current service and how we might identify future needs in the system. And then on the right side is that planned future network for transit. So again, thinking maybe 20 years down the road, where is the growth happening in Sammamish? Does that future growth have current service? Does it need more service? Those are the questions that we're going to be interacting with on that side of it. So really important pieces to understand the service component of the plan. Again, that capital side, we're really trying to do a good job of identifying very specific actions that the city can take to do what we can influence what we can do in the community. Again, things like sidewalk access to bus stops. Those are the things that we want to be able to have compile into a project list so that it's very clear in the plan what we intend to do in the future and in how we intend to invest public dollars. Again, the barriers and recommendations, that's kind of the opportunities and constraints. We want to make sure that we're recommending really impactful improvements. And then finally, and I think this is what makes the plan really implementable and really specific, is having cost estimates. So instead of just identifying a broad range of things and kind of pie in the sky, we want to be able to say, okay, this is exactly, in today's dollars, this is exactly what we think it's going to cost, and that will help us plan for the future. It helps us prioritize, and it helps us, again, just identify where those investments go. And then, of course, the policy, as I mentioned, this is kind of the bread and butter. This is where the rubber meets the road. So again, we will be identifying ways that we can be specific in our policy language that will then feed into our comprehensive plan so that we can be really intentional with our transit plan. And then we will have, as part of this, an equity analysis. So this will be kind of a broad look at how all the communities and all of the different communities within the Sammamish community are served by transit. So another important piece of how we plan. With that, I'm going to hand over the microphone to Sarah to talk about existing conditions.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to talk about existing conditions. This is really what we've done so far on this project. We're going to look at demographic data within the city, commute patterns within the city, and then move on to the transit data that we have. Okay, so starting with demographic data and existing conditions, I'm going to generally talk about between 2021 and 2023, and that really depends on what data is available. When I'm talking about demographic data, this is all coming from the census, and the most recently available data is from 2021. So we're going to start with age breakdown. In 2021, this is the age breakdown of residents in Sammamish. You can see, even just looking at this chart, that there's a lot of families here. Significantly actually younger than the general population in King County. So about 30% of residents in Sammamish are under the age of 18. Countywide, that number is about 19%. You can also see that the percentage of the population over the age of 65 has more than doubled in the past 20 years within Sammamish. As of 2021, that number was 7.8%, and it's closer to 14% countywide. So again, Sammamish is generally younger than the rest of the King County. Here's a look at population density within the city. We know there's some densely populated neighborhoods, such as the Kalani neighborhood. And here's a look at vehicle ownership. So this is the number of vehicles per occupied housing unit. This number is pretty high. 87% have 2 or more vehicles available in an occupied house. Within King County generally, that number was 66%. And only 1.2% of households in Sammamish do not have access to a personal vehicle. That number is very low, but here's a map to understand kind of where those households generally are. We have existing commute patterns. So how do people get to work? Well, actually within the city of Sammamish, nearly 25% of people work from home as of 2021. Just for a point of reference, in 2019, prior to COVID, that number was just under 10%. So of course, COVID impacts have generally increased the number of people who work from home. When we adjust for work from home, so this chart shows both with work from home and without, excluding and including. When we adjust for work from home, just about 80% of Sammamish commuters drive to work alone without a carpool. Just about 8% take public transit to work. And this map shows where people who use public transit to get to work, where they live within the city. And you can see it's kind of more densely populated near the transit route. Here's our travel time to work. So how long does it take people who do commute to work, how long does it take them to get to work? So when we average this across all modes, within the city, the average time is about 34 minutes. But you can see here, that's gonna vary a lot based on how you get to work. So for those who use public transit to get to work, it's actually, the majority of them takes longer than an hour. And now I'll move on to the existing transit routes as of 2023. So I'm going to back up for a second. There are several transit agencies who operate in the Puget Sound region. King County Metro and Sound Transit are 2 different agencies that operate within Sammamish. Sound Transit runs the 554 route. They also run all of the light rail. So the light rail that's expanding region-wide is run by Sound Transit. Most of the buses are run by King County Metro. So within Sammamish, there is 1 bus that runs all day, and this bus is a 269 in the green in the middle, and that runs about every 30 minutes, a little bit better during the peak hour. The 216 bus also runs peak hour only, and it goes all the way to Seattle, whereas the 269 terminates in Issaquah. Then there's also the 554 bus. I should mention the 216, King County Metro recently announced service cuts, and the 216 will be cut as part of many other bus routes that have impacts due to COVID and beyond, will be cut in fall 2023. But this is, currently it's still operating through the summer. The 554 bus route runs very limited service through Sammamish. So it only runs kind of off-peak, very early in the morning, a couple trips directly to Seattle, and then in the evening, kind of after the peak hour, it runs trips from Seattle to Sammamish. It does run all day from Issaquah, so it connects directly to Issaquah Transit Center and the Issaquah Highlands Park and Ride. So this is a map of walk sheds. Generally, we consider what are people willing to walk to the nearest transit stop to actually catch a bus. So if you live a 20-minute walk away from the nearest bus stop, you probably aren't willing to make that walk. So we really look at between a 5 and 10-minute walk that people are generally willing to make. That corresponds to about a quarter mile or a half mile walk. That might vary a little bit based on grade or pedestrian's ability. I know it's very hilly here in Sammamish. These numbers are not adjusted for grade. We're really just looking at a quarter mile or a half mile from the transit stop. And we're only looking at walking routes, so that's why this map looks a little weird. We're not looking at just a clean radius. It's just around trails and sidewalks and streets. So a very low percentage of the population lives kind of within what we consider a reasonable walking distance of an existing transit stop. Here we're going to look at most recently available ridership data. So this is from 2022, and we have you can see on the left from the map the most used bus stop. So this is the total stop activity on an average day, an average weekday, and the most used bus stops are generally around 8th Ave and as well as the Park and Ride, the South Sammamish Park and Ride. And then what we're showing in the graph on the right is the transit stop activity. So over time, we're looking at 2016, 2019, and 2022. And we can see that transit usage was growing between 2016 and 2019. Of course, COVID occurred in 2020, had significant impacts to both transit service and people's commutes and general travel patterns. And we can see ridership is not quite back up where it was prior to the pandemic. So what this graph shows is we're looking at some regional travel destinations on the left and then some more local within Sammamish travel destinations on the right. And this is showing us comparing how long it would take to get to these locations riding a bus versus driving. So the green, something that's green is going to be 1.5 to 2 times longer using a bus. Something red could be 3 times longer or more taking a bus. So you can see on an average day, it's almost comparable to take a bus versus drive from key destinations within Sammamish to, say, Microsoft campus in Redmond or downtown Seattle. But something like North Bend is going to take quite a bit longer than just driving. And here's a map of delay using just for buses on a typical day. And we can see here I'm actually just looking at, or we just have Route 269 here because this is the bus that runs all day and has the highest ridership. So this is pretty representative of a typical day. And you can see most of the delay kind of occurs on 228th between 8th and the South Sammamish Park and Ride. And that's kind of to be expected as it's really where most of the traffic is within the city. It's really the only north-south connecting corridor. So that's kind of our existing conditions and what we've put together so far. So I'll move on to the schedule. We've completed existing conditions. There's a couple of the reports back in the back of the room. If you haven't seen them yet, you can look through them. Just a little bit more information than what I presented. And of course, tonight we're having the workshop and we're looking for your feedback. And our next step is really the future needs and capital projects, as Doug was mentioning. As we're looking into the future, we know Sound Transit's expanding to Redmond and Issaquah. And we want to make sure that Sammamish has those connections as we need moving forward, and looking at our capital projects list and how we can, as Doug mentioned, it's really about things that the city has control over. So something more like sidewalks, crossings, access to transit is going to be our capital facilities project list. And then we plan to have this finish the plan and wrap it up towards the end of this year. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Kendall to talk about getting your opinion.
Thank you. Now, normally when you come to a public workshop or come to a meeting, the first thing they do is say, please put away your cell phones because we don't want you talking to other people or not paying attention. And I'm going to just make your day. If you have a cell phone, please bring it and get it out because you're going to need it. No, not to text your friends. We're going to do something other thing on that. I'm going to chat a little bit about what we have going on here. First of all, we've got a project website. And I don't know how many of you visited the project website at this point, just besides me and Doug. Basically, this is on the city's website, and it has access to all the information about this particular process. And while it's not on there yet, the existing conditions report, we have the hard copies here tonight, it will be there likely pretty soon here, and you'll have an opportunity to look at it. So if you are wanting to look at the existing conditions report tonight, we ask you to please not take it home with you. It is not a giveaway. It is just here for tonight. But this particular site has a lot of really good information on it and an opportunity for you to share your views. This first quarter, you don't have to do this right now. But you probably should do it when you get home, or you can go directly to the website. But this allows you to look at something that's called our social pinpoint site. I'm not sure if any of you have ever seen one of these before, but who's ever used a Google map? And I think we all know Siri lies sometimes. Siri's not on this one, and she's not going to lie. But what this does, it allows you, when you see these really cool little things at the top here, it allows you to basically share a comment or an idea spatially. So we can see it, and then we can compare that to the technical data that Sarah and the team are putting together, right? So it's kind of marrying what would be a comment or an idea with something that's real. So in this case, once you go on there, there's nothing to download. We don't need any super secret passwords. You just go there, and if you have a question or a comment or you want to say something, you just type it in there. We ask you, obviously, for your email, which is the only thing that is required so that we can actually send a note back to you. We'd like to know your name and your phone number, but it's not essential. So if you don't want to put it on there, that's no problem. And then you can actually upload photos. So as an example, we've done another one of these where, let's say we have a bus stop that is less than adequate or perhaps not great, or you want to show the distance between a home or a business and a bus stop, any of that kind of stuff, it's a great opportunity to do that. And when we finish this presentation tonight, actually Doug's going to give us a little spin around so you can see how it works. But it's a really cool process, and that will remain open for at least the next month or so people can actually add comments onto it. Super easy, but our contact information is there, so if you do find that you've got a problem, you can always call or text myself or Sarah, and we'll be happy to talk with you about it. Now, live polling, this is what we're going to do now with your phones. Does anyone not have a phone? I don't see you with a phone. Do you have a phone? Do you have a phone? Okay. Do you have it with you? Okay, you need your phone in your hand and out. It's like you're back in school, I know. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a couple of quick polls here, and I need you to scan this little box here, okay? Kind of a cool little toy. Back in the day, we used to use click pollers or just your straight raise your hand. This is much cooler because if we were perhaps doing this meeting at home or broadcasting it, people that were participating at home could do it at the same time. Tonight, even though this is being recorded, if you are watching this on the replay, I'm sorry, you cannot do it at home, but you will be able to answer these questions on the website. So let's try one just to see, how did you hear about this meeting? You're on your phone now, you should be seeing those answers right on your phone. Are you seeing those? A nod would be helpful. Okay. So the questions are city website, email, Facebook, newsletter, word of mouth, other. The reason we ask these things, of course, is so we can track and see what kind of are the best channels to getting to folks. For the two out there that said other, who said other? Were you forced to come, or how did you find out about the meeting? Okay, so you were basically forced to come. Okay, no. Okay. Encouraged at a live meeting. Okay, that's great. And that's really important, too, because as we go in the community, if you're at other events or you're at your Rotary or your Kiwanis or wherever your thing is, please feel free to share that. Who's my other? Yeah. I have a trip coming up. No, who's my other? Is it really? Honest to God. I have to check that out. It's not that I don't believe you, but really? Oh, no. You don't have to download anything with that. You just have to go to no, get out of that entirely. Go back. Let me go back here in the... Go right to that. See where it says a QR code? I did that one. Okay, I hit open link there. Yeah, let's go back one more time. Okay, go ahead and open link. Okay, open link. There you go. Watch this. That's my credit card. Instructions. All right. Oh, yeah, you guys are trying to take my credit card, aren't you? No. Do you have a lot of money on your credit card? No, you know what? I owe money, so you can really have it. Okay. I'm going to wait while this comes up, but we're gonna go on, and if we'll, yeah. But, okay, so who was my other? Just curious? Okay. I won't hold you to it. All right. So let's go to the next question. Where do you live? This one is really cool. So in this case, you can have the thing opens up there and you can just drag the little dot to basically where they live. Let's not get too concerned about the actual intersection. We're trying to go generally in the city on that map. Where do you live? And once you drop that in there, I should be able to see that. This is a new one for us. It's a new toy. We're just trying this for the first time tonight. So can you guys all see that one? Is you're still asking for a credit card? I want your money. Okay, there we go. See, people are showing up. I'm very excited about this. That is so cool. I'm just saying, all right. So this shows us we've got people from all over. Who's out of town? Okay, but thank you for playing. Again, one of the reasons we ask these kind of questions is as we go through the outreach process, we want to make sure that we're engaging people from all over the community and not just in one pocket, right? So here's the next one. If you take the bus, where do you normally go? I don't take the bus. Or work, school, dining, going out, or other. And be honest about it, you know. Is it still asking you for money? It's working now. Okay, all right. Is it an Android? Okay, we'll play with this afterwards. All right, so one of the things that should not surprise you, and this is sad but true, most people who live in Sammamish do not take the bus. We just recently concluded a statistically valid telephone survey. You'll be getting more information about that, but the target for completed interviews was around 400. We actually got over 965, which means the statistically valid sample is a lot higher. I also want to let folks know that within that, we have 30% of the respondents that were actually Asian. And so we also have Hispanic, we go by age, we go by area. So it's a really robust survey. And what we're doing, which you'll see again next week, we have some council members here, I'm sure are former council members, but one of the first things that people will ask is, you know, how can that be valid? No one called me or anyone I know. It can still be valid, but just to make sure, we're opening it up to anyone who's in the city that wants to take the same survey online. And then we're able to compare the two samples to see how they might be different or how they may be the same. But in either case, you'll be looking for that on social media and on the project website beginning early next week. Most of the reasons why people don't take it vary, but we want to ask you tonight, what factors would make you more likely to take transit? And that's kind of the purpose, again, of the study, right? If there are things that we can do, whether that's frequency or number of stops or the location of the stops, how do you do that? And then how do you balance that out with cost, right? Because we hear most time, well, I want it to go more often or to different areas or whatever, but this is kind of the thing. Now, if transit service got me where I want to go faster, if transit was more frequent, isn't this instant gratification fun? Unless they're getting your credit card. It's working for him now. Okay, good. So now we've got everybody, great. So what we learned in the survey, again, some of these same things that are echoing, that people are interested in either frequency, consistency, or a specific location. So if something you would drive takes you 20 minutes, but taking a bus makes you walk, and then and it's like an hour and a half, that's less convenient. It's not going to surprise anyone that as we're looking in the future, we're considering the impact potentially of light rail in the community later. And when you throw that into the mix and ask people if they would be willing to take a bus to a light rail station, the numbers go up dramatically. So there's a lot of things we'll be talking about and looking at that in general. And then how often do you have access to a personal vehicle? You heard Sarah talk a little bit about this in terms of the existing conditions, but we are going to be asking about that always. And just, it's not one of our questions tonight, but I'm just curious, does anyone have kids in the house that are under 18 at this point? And I'm just curious, have they already got their driver's licenses? Okay. We're finding on a national level that actually fewer and fewer teens are opting to get a car of their own, and they are more likely to be a little more willing to go on public transit than some of us might be. So that is a shifting demographic and a shifting behavioral pattern that we're seeing among younger people, which is also one of the reasons that within the study we're taking a look at that to make sure that we're paying attention. Yes. Yeah, cost is a big thing. I tried to explain that to my nephew, and he said, let's have a talk about car insurance. And this is after he'd already totaled one of our cars. So the cost of car insurance definitely had a dramatic increase, and he decided that basically public transportation was an excellent choice. What race or ethnic origin do you identify with? Again, we have a very, very culturally rich community here in Sammamish, so we want to make sure that as we're going through all of these different exercises that we are being representative of all of the various populations that are here. And we are also taking extra steps to make sure that we're reaching out to some of the community groups. We have a couple here, for example, that do have their meetings in Chinese or in Hindu, and so we want to make sure that we're making that connection as well. And so we do see here, much like the community, a good, robust difference. Look at that. And this one I love to talk about. Do not lie. If anybody says they're under 18, we know you're lying. So please just tell the truth. How old are you? We gave you a nice big range in there of 25 to 59. I'm so sad I would have to go in the last column. But again, the reason we ask these questions and demographics both on the website and in the survey is to make sure we're capturing everybody within the community. And it's not just the same people that have been in the same bracket or the same age group at the same time. So all of this information that we're conducting on the community outreach engagement, both on the online and in these workshops, is being used to inform the plan and prioritize things. Hello, new people, welcome. And what languages do you speak at home? And this one is not just one. If you speak more than one of these, good for you. We're not talking about speaking a language when you're like planning a vacation. We're talking about actually at home speaking a language, which means you're probably good at it. So look, we've got other. What's my other? Polish. Awesome. Okay. See? Everybody's got skills, mad skills. So again, on this one, we're having a lot of our material, you'll notice, is being translated into Spanish, but we're also providing materials in other languages if requested, and then we're working with some of the local community groups that can help us connect and do these presentations in alternate languages so that we're able to make those connections. And one big takeaway from today, besides how awesome Mentimeter is, you can type a word into your phone, and it's going to appear up there in a word cloud. Those are kind of fun. And again, we'll be looking for these also in the online version as well. So tell us what you think, and after everybody puts their little submit in there, that's going to show up on our screen as well. Access to transit, great. Let's see what else pops up. And then we're going to open it up to some questions from the group that I'm assuming that Doug and Sarah will be more than happy to answer. Do you want to show social payment then, or yeah, before? Okay, all right, we'll do before Q&A. Reliability, speed, options, light rail, access to transit. Everybody's excited about light rail. We're also doing a similar project in Issaquah, and light rail is like, light rail, when's it coming, when's it coming? And it's going to be here someday. Yeah, look at that. Okay, so few people here. Yeah, we know. But good news is that we are actually recording this meeting so that it'll be available online. So if people weren't able to attend tonight, not everyone, believe it or not, is riveted by public workshops. Some people actually like to do other things. So those of you that are watching at home, we really appreciate you taking the time to take a look at this. But what I'm going to do now, thank you again for all these great answers. Before we go to question and answer, I'm going to switch it over here to Doug, who's going to give us a little example about our social pinpoint. Really cool program, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So go ahead.
All right, thank you, Kendall. And hi, everybody, again. So on the screen here, we have the actual mapping tool that Kendall briefly spoke about a few minutes ago. And before I get into the actual tool, I wanted to show our web page and show you how to get there. So we have some materials in the back that can link you to our project web page. And once you're here, you can scroll all the way to the bottom, and you can either click directly into this little portal that's linked in the page and say, get started now. Or you can, if you want a larger one, you can click interactive comment map, and that brings you to this page. So it's a little bit larger to see. So just a heads up on that. So once you read through, I won't read through all of this, but this is just kind of an overview of what we're doing and gives you some little prompts there. So once you say get started, you can just use it exactly like Google Maps, and you can zoom in, you can scroll around, you can look at some of the information. There's a little bit of, again, this the splash screen, I think is what they call it, has some of that information about how to use the tool. You can also see what people have already put in. So there's been a comment about the MetroFlex service, which is an alternative transit service in the city of Sammamish. We also had a little notice about our workshop, which is what we're doing right now, and then some contact information. So that's the left-hand navigation there. Once you click out of that, again, just pretty much like Google Maps, we have highlighted the stops and the main transit route in Sammamish. So you can zoom in and say, okay, well, I live up here and the Demery Hill area, right? And then you can say, okay, well, the nearest stop to me is up here. And then you might think about, well, how am I going to get there? If I live out in one of these cul-de-sacs, this might be a 1.5 mile walk. So you might, again, this is just for example purposes, but you would say add a comment, and then you can say, I want to have better access to the main bus route in Sammamish. So you would click on that, and then move the map around to where you would want. So in this case, you might say, okay, well, I'm going to put it near my house. So then you would say place marker here. And then this is where you would say, I live 1.5 miles from the nearest stop, and there are sidewalk gaps. Please consider addressing these gaps in the plan. And then, of course, as Kendall mentioned earlier, you can put your name. The most critical piece is the information, so that is the only thing that's required. But what is also very helpful for us is if you can drop in a photo. A lot of times you might have a very specific thing that you want us to know about. There's, this gap and it looks like this. It's very dangerous for me to walk. Snap a photo if you can, attach it, and then say, add my comment. I'm not going to click that right now because I don't want to, this is actually live, so I'm not going to do that, but just so you can see that. And then once you say add comment, it will be on the map, and it will look like for example, the one that was already put in here. It will look like this. And then it will stay on the map for as long as we have this live. And so you can come back later, you can see who's interacted with it, because you can go in and like other people's comments or dislike them. And then you can see if other people support what you're saying. And that's kind of, again, just a really good way for us to understand what the community wants, but also what the community knows about. Sometimes we don't always know about some of these problems. We usually know about many of them, but we don't always know about everything. So very helpful. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. So if you would carve out just a few minutes of your day, come in here, drop a note, and then if you see something later on too, oh, I forgot about that, come back, drop a note, and then it'll be part of the plan. We will have this live for a little while longer. We'll keep putting it on social media and all the different channels that we have, and we will probably do a last call kind of post. So just check in every once in a while, and you can always let us know if there's questions. My information is, I have my business cards in the back. You can always call us and email us. So that's the overview. I don't know if there's anything else you would add to that.
Yeah, the most important thing you can do for us, is anybody on Facebook or any kind of social media? Just me, I guess. Okay. Share it. Share the link. And if you just basically, when you're on that, all you have to do is copy the top up there, the address, and you can share that on your social media, send that out, and it works through Twitter, Facebook, Insta, whatever. That's all great. The other thing that's important on that, just in case it comes up, that particular interface has 87 languages on it. So basically, if someone comes in and wants to do it in Polish or in French or in the language of their choice, it will automatically translate, and you can actually put in the comments in that language, and we'll get the translation stuff back. So just a real cool little toy.
And as you can see, that's a good point, Kendall. Thank you for mentioning that. In the top right corner is this button right here, and this is where you can get to the different languages. It is Google Translate.
Yep.
So
Yes.
might not be perfect, but.
Just the comment, but the email address is on our back end, so it won't show up in the, in fact, you want to call up the comment that we've got on there so they can see what that looks like?
Yeah, this is what it will look like to the public, to your neighbors, yeah.
So it'll just show the comment and not your background, but we'll have that information. And it's important too, because if there is something that we want to get back to you on and say, oh, hey, we're doing this or the other, it's a good idea. You had a question?
Yeah, I think I'm technically okay, but
Okay.
I can't. The good news is my daughter does social media like for Amazon or Microsoft, and she takes transit. She'll love this. she's going to be great for you guys.
Great.
She's going to be, and she uses the transit.
Great.
And my question is, though, I can't get. I'm the nitwit one. I can't get to the website. I can't get to the place to do this.
Let's talk after the meeting.
Yeah,
I can help
we'll
you.
hook you up on that.
Yeah.
She's a social media person.
Okay, totally fine. Yeah, let's talk after.
Yeah,
I
no,
can
this is me
absolutely
having a
help you.
conversation with my dad about Alexa, and he's like, "Who is Alexa? What do I do?" No problem. Yes, absolutely.
So I wouldn't say I'm active on social media, but I have social media and follow things. And I already follow the city of Sammamish, but I had no idea there were a whole bunch of recent posts. Like, Facebook has their algorithm and they prioritize things that they think you want to see. City of Sammamish is never, ever shows up in my feed. So I wonder if that's happening for other people.
It probably is. I mean, I'd have to go back and talk to your folks there, but normally what happens is that we each have algorithms that feed us stuff. Yeah. So if you constantly are checking that or liking that, it's going to start showing up in your feed more. But from an outreach standpoint, we know factually that individuals like you that share this information are far more likely to spread the information than the city's site. That's just kind of how the world works. But if we're going to be sending out some additional social media posts coming up, so that'll be something that happens. But all you have to do is keep liking Sammamish and keep liking their posts, and you'll see more of them.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is, aside from social media, maybe put some stuff up at Safeway or around the community, because I'm super interested in what's going on with the city, and I just recently kind of dialed in on some of this stuff, and I'm like, oh, there was a meeting last week. There's this going on. We actually have a city newsletter. I used to love to read the newsletter. I didn't know it's a PDF form. There must be thousands of people that have the same thing and have no idea there's this stuff going on. And maybe, I don't know, maybe there's some other avenues, because I think, I consider myself a fairly engaged, maybe somebody that's less engaged with what's going on would even be, I feel like I'm a little bit in the dark, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we must have tens of thousands of residents that are completely in the dark, right? I mean, and you can see that. What are we, 10 people?
It's a good point. I think that's something we can chat about with city staff and figure out ways to increase that.
Yeah,
I'd
and
like
real quick, Kendall,
good.
if I could, thank you for that comment. That's really good. So one thing I would suggest for this particular project is we actually, let me just show you on our project webpage, we have a little button here to sign up for updates on the project. We do email blasts every once in a while. And so we'll probably do a summary of this meeting, and we'll let you know when the next meetings are. So that would be the best way, at least for this project. The issues that you're identifying with social media, I think might be indicative of something bigger that maybe we can talk with other folks. But for this particular project, that's the best way, is that little icon right there in the middle. So thanks.
I'm thinking about the outreach to all the high school kids, not just the adults, but there's a lot of people needing to get around this stuff in town, especially the new things you're going to do. And I think the different groups, right? The high school kids may have different needs and different ideas.
Yeah, great point. Thank you.
I think we're going to go to questions. You got ready for that part? You want to switch back?
Yeah, I think we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, so
I don't think we have anything else.
Yeah, we'd like to hear from you. If you have any questions about the process or any comments, I mean, these two have been actually great. So, hey, thank you for coming to the meeting. But does anybody have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to get on the record tonight? Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys have any model cities or plans that you've been looking at that you can share, even in Washington or around that?
Yeah, I can take that one. So great question. So for those who didn't hear, are there any model plans that we're looking at? So the great thing is that we have our folks at DKS helping us with this plan. So as city staff members, we don't necessarily have the really rich expertise in transit. So we've hired DKS associates. So that's Sarah and Kendall again, and they work with cities all over the place. They're a nationwide firm, and so they are able to pull from all kinds of different plans. They're actually working with the city of Issaquah right now, so there's some synergies there, so we can kind of get some good partnerships going there. So I don't know, Kendall or Sarah, if you want to talk on that more specifically, but
Yeah, I think just to add, yeah, we do kind of work all over the state and work directly with Sound Transit and King County Metro. And yeah, as Doug mentioned, we are doing a really similar plan in Issaquah, so just a neighboring city, and kind of making sure these plans all work together and make sense.
Okay, other questions? Anyone? Yep, let me pop over there. We just want to hear you so we can get it on the recording. Here you go.
I will follow up on that question, and then I have one more. Are there any cities in the country that have had experience like Sammamish, where there's not a lot of transit use, affluent community, and lots of cars, that have had some success at moving the needle? And what were the lessons learned in those cities? That's just an observation. On your slide earlier, you showed the ages of all the people in Sammamish and the 2021 ACS information. I think it'd be interesting to learn back 20 years and 10 years ago to now, what are the 40 to 45, 45 to 50, 50 to 55 groups changing in the cities? Because that's a pretty big indicator of if the whole, demographic age makeup is going to shift or not. It's just an observation.
Yeah, I don't have that data on me, but that is readily available, so I can look that up. Yeah, I only showed population over 65, and that was aging over the past couple decades. So.
I think he was also asking about if there are examples of other communities that had, let's say, a lack of transit use that was successfully shifted over.
Yeah, I don't have like a ton of background in that at the moment. I don't know, Kendall, do you have any ideas?
Yeah,
on
there
that?
have been, on an international basis, there have been some studies that have shown, well, as an example, and again, we're not suggesting that this is what it's going to be, but when all transit services become free, the free, the use goes up. City of Big Bear Lake, as an example, has a trolley system that runs 3 routes pretty constantly, but it's completely free, not only for residents, but for visitors and people coming off the Pacific Rim Trail. And you've also seen instances of this, frankly, in Europe, where you have densely populated cities. Sammamish isn't really as densely populated as some of the more urban centers, and that's one of the challenges, because you have single-family homes that are so spread out, it's kind of difficult to make that switch. So what you've seen in some of those is they've made the switch to microtransit. We're seeing that actually in California in a couple communities, where instead of having a bus, they'll do smaller on-demand that pick people up and connect them. And so that's where you see fundamental behavioral shifts. I would strongly suggest, I'll send some links for you guys as well. There's a guy named Doug McKenzie Moore that does community-based social marketing, which is behavioral change. How do you get people to do something that they didn't do before? And he was on the forefront of things like recycling, which we all do now, but we didn't do before. And there's a number of really interesting studies that address transportation planning and transit use. And I'll send some notes over to you guys so you can take a look at those. But yes, it is possible. Yes, I'm sorry, let me go back there.
I was just curious if we have any information from Metro on the success of Metroflex and the success of seeing as, anyone under 19 years of age can ride for free, and have we seen an uptick in those numbers? Personally, I know my family uses Metroflex quite a lot. I've educated them. So I just was interested to see if we've seen some change around that, considering we're a city that, have been underutilizing our Metro system.
Thank you. Great question. So for those who don't know, Metroflex is what we call an alternative transit service. It is run by King County Metro through a contractor, so they have a contracted driver to pick people up in a shuttle van. And then it's a service area-based program, so it doesn't serve the entire community, it serves a portion of the community. And that has been a great program. It recently transitioned from what we called Community Ride, which was actually same model, but it had a shuttle, an actual 12-person shuttle, I believe it was, to a van now. And when they did that shift, it was March of this year. So it's only about 4 months of data with the new MetroFlex program. So we don't have any hard data on that yet. We have talked to Metro about just some preliminary results, but they haven't released anything publicly yet. But with that being said, we did have good data with community rides. So again, the same model, but different vehicle. And that was a really popular program that showed a lot of growth over we launched that in July of 2019. So the average trips per day, it was I want to say something like 80 trips a day. Don't quote me on that, but it was very, very popular. And MetroFlex is similarly popular, but with the transition, it kind of dipped a little bit. I think you had to download a different app, and there were a few things that you had to do before you could actually ride it. And so there was a dip in the service. So it's climbing back up, and I think it's pretty comparable to what it used to be. But there are differences that we're hearing about in terms of the shuttle versus the van. So that has impacted ridership a little bit, we think. But again, no hard results yet, just preliminary things that we've heard from Metro. But it is a great program, and that kind of gets at the idea that, in the slides earlier, we talked about fixed route bus service. So 228th has our main bus routes, right? But if you're not within walking distance, the map that Sarah talked about, it might be prohibitive to ride the Route 269, for instance. But MetroFlex fills that gap. So again, it's more of a flexible on-demand service. You can download the app, schedule a ride. It'll pick you up within a short walking distance of where you live, and then get you to your destination as long as it's within that service area. So.
Yeah, I was excited when I heard about this and then found out that we're outside the service area. So if like my mom and my kids can't realistically walk to there, and it's just not a safe bike ride to get in the service area. So love to see that expanded.
That would be something you might consider?
Yes.
Yeah, and so thank you for that. And for those who didn't hear, the comment was about not being within the service area. And so we actually talked to a lot of residents who are just outside the service area who are like, I really want to take advantage of this program, and I'm just not in that. We have had lots of conversations with the King County Metro about this, and unfortunately, it's a cost thing for them. The more they expand the boundary, the more it costs them to operate the service. And so they did do a small expansion of the service area to the Highlands. So you can now get to the Highlands, the Swedish hospital at the Highlands from Sammamish. So that was the one expansion that they did make, and it was kind of a big deal for them. They are looking at what they can do, but again, it's a cost thing. So we do have those conversations, and we have expressed upon them. Every time we get commentary from the community, we always share it with Metro. So they are aware. And it's funny because when we talk to them about that, they say that all the other communities say the same thing. So it's a popular program. You're lucky if you can take advantage of it. And yes, we have talked to them about expanding it, but there are barriers. So.
Yep, but wait till I get to you. Hold on. Okay.
Yeah, as you mentioned, 228th is the main arterial for our city, but I hear some other folks, right, because I live around 228th and 35th, and the bus comes to the South Transit down there, and then it shoots off to the Issaquah Highlands, but it would be nice if they had a bus that went from, all the way down 228th from one end of Sammamish all the way down to the Issaquah Transit Center, because it shoots off. I know it's time consuming. I guess that's a problem, because it's time consuming to go up to the Highlands and then shooting back down to the Issaquah Transit when 228th is our emergency, our whole livelihood up here, and it stops and then it shoots off.
Yeah, and so you're identifying a good point, and so a couple things I want to touch on. So King County Metro actually has a document that they call their service guidelines. So this document has all the technical reasons and metrics and criteria for how they design a route, basically. And maybe Sarah can give a little bit better detail on that, but they consider a lot of things. One of the things that is kind of the high importance criteria is density. How many people can they serve? So it's kind of I talk about it as sort of a chicken and the egg problem. To have really good service, you need really good ridership. But to get that really good ridership, you got to have really good service. So it's kind of this again, chicken and the egg thing. So, but population density is one of the big drivers in that. How many people can they serve, and how can they get a bus there? So it is tricky. And as you go down the hill toward Issaquah, 228th turns into 43rd. It gets really sparsely populated in parts of that, and so it's something that, again, can be a tricky thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, with the Issaquah Highlands, and then the new school going in, so you're gonna have more customers or clientele right there.
Yeah.
So that might be a good stop.
Yeah, that's definitely something. So the one sort of second layer to that is King County Metro's told us that they look at population as it exists, so not as it's planned. So there are some timing things. I know it's maybe getting a little bit too detailed here, but there are the service guidelines that they have are really specific. And I don't know if Sarah, if you want to add anything to the service guidelines conversation. But.
I think you hit it. Like population density is definitely key for Metro. I think Doug hit that.
Oh, do we have other questions? Oh, I'm coming around. I'm getting my steps in. I need it.
Hey, so I was listening to a podcast recently about the increase in e-bike use and how there's a lot of cities, especially in Europe, who they've really regulated speed and safety stuff, and they are utilizing that for the populations that live. They're already bike-friendly places, but they can expand that to people who live even farther away and can still hop on their e-bike and ride. So I don't know your experience with other cities in the U.S., but is there any thought about how to incorporate more of that, for example, around here?
Great question. So we do have conversations internally about those emerging technologies. So we have heard anecdotally from many people in the community that there's this rise in e-bike use. There's a lot of topographical challenges in the city, right? And so the e-bikes can be really helpful in making those connections, up and down hills. And so that's something that we have had really preliminary conversations on, and something that we want to, in terms of just broadly new technologies, want to understand a little bit better and identify ways, particularly through policy, that we can get ahead of that. So it's on the radar. It's not something that we have dug too deeply into yet, but I think that is an emerging issue that we will eventually be addressing. And maybe a sub part of that is connecting from a transit stop to your home. They call that the first mile / last mile problem. So the last mile, or the first mile between your home and the stop, and then the last mile between your stop and your destination. A lot of times people are kind of stuck. What do? I got to walk a little ways. I got to ride and so that's a prohibitive obstacle for a lot of people. So we do want to identify ways to help with that. And so things like, just hypothetically speaking, the micro, they call it micro mobility. So like the scooters, the bikes, those shared programs, those are things that other cities look at to fill that gap for that first mile and last mile problem. But we will be looking at that. We've had some, preliminary conversations. It's on the radar. We don't have anything on the books at the moment.
Okay, yes, coming back.
Kind of building off that last question and you got to it too, is there's going to be proliferation of other types of electric vehicles out there and personal transportation methods. And so there's the access, there's the safety aspect, and I think we're going to have to be crisp. Are they more like cars and share the space where cars are, or do they go to the trails? And just from personal experience, like having electric vehicles, e-bikes or others like that, with traditional bikes, there's a safety issue there because there's a big speed disparity. So the city's going to have to be crisp about what is the channel and the mode that they go on.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, I was on a bike ride with a friend last night on the Burke Gilman, and there's all these people wrote in chalk, no e-bikes, I think because they go so fast, and there are conflicts because they can get cooking. And so there are definitely things that we know that the police department is interested in that kind of thing too. So there are a lot of things that we would need to work out. But again, we're having those kind of really preliminary conversations. It is on the radar, and there are a lot of things and details that would need to be worked out with all of that.
Just wanted to add on that too. one of the things you can help us with is that if you're interested in e-bikes or you're interested in that, when you go to that map and say like, this would be a great community, there's several, for example, that do the rental e-bike situation where you can go, pick one up, go to the bus stop, leave it there, and when somebody else gets off the bus stop, they pick it up and take it back. But also you can put some of the concerns, because most jurisdictions now actually are regulating e-bikes, prohibiting them from trail use for that very reason, not only for the other bikes, but for pedestrians. And I'm not to making any generalizations, but not all riders of e-bikes and e-scooters are necessarily experienced riders. And so sometimes that can be challenging as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and safety is a big part of that.
Any other questions or comments that we want to get on tonight? Because we have a couple other closing things for you guys too. Anybody wanted to weigh in on anything else? Okay, you got one more? Here we go. Oh, let me help you. She's asking how to get there, and I just happen to have these fabulous cards in my hand. Here, let me give you some. They're also here in the back. You can take a couple, give them to a friend. These are like a small business card handout, right? And I think we've all been places where they hand you paper, and then the paper winds up in your purse or your backpack and gets thrown away and you never see it again. This is a really small thing. It's also in multiple languages, but it has the link to the website and also to the social pinpoint map that we were just talking about, right? We've got a couple hundred of these things in the back of the room. We would love you to take some of these with you and hand them out to friends and family so they know. The other thing that perhaps we want to also plug is that we are looking for people to sit on a citizens advisory committee for this particular effort. And Doug, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what that would entail. And on the sign-in sheets, there's an opportunity for you to like click a box that says you'd like to do that. And before I let him explain that as well, also in the back, there are meeting evaluation forms. We would really appreciate it if you take a moment and fill that out so we know what we can do better next time or things you really enjoyed about tonight's meeting. And Doug.
And on the back side of the meeting evaluation form is a comment form. So if you think of something you just want to write it down, take the form, write it down, and there's a tray right next to it. So we'll collect those, we'll record all of them verbatim, and it'll be part of the project record. So that, again, helps us plan. So please, put your thoughts down. Be really helpful.
One more question.
Yeah.
Just one more quick question. Is the fire stations and the medics and stuff involved in part of this? Like, I just wondered how much, because, it's so crowded as it is when they come down the street. It's a cluster to get everyone out of the way right now.
Yeah, they haven't been involved directly, but we can certainly reach out to them. I think we do coordinate with them via our other divisions in Public Works. So I'm a Public Works employee, and we have a traffic engineering team, and they interface with them a lot more than we do. But we are looking at studies of those kinds of issues that I think you're identifying. So yeah, but as far as the transit plan goes, it's a little bit kind of tangentially related, I think, but we can definitely involve them. So to Kendall's point, thank you, Kendall. As a reminder, I meant to say this at the beginning, but I'll take the moment now. So we are looking for a community advisory committee participation through this program or this plan. We have a technical advisory committee that's made up of people from King County Metro, Sound Transit, other cities nearby, our regional planning agency. And they're focused on really technical parts of this, but we also are forming a community advisory committee to get the residents' feedback. So the idea there is that it won't be a huge amount of time commitment, but if you can carve out a few hours over the next 6-ish months, the idea there is that we'll convene a few times throughout this process. We will be sharing some specific items like draft plans and milestones in our process to get your feedback specifically, and then build a better plan from there. So if you can carve out some time, we have a little information sheet at the back. It's on the right of the table, kind of propped up there. And in the sign-up sheet, there's a little box that you can check to say you're interested in. We'll reach out to you in the next week or two.
And we have checked boxes.
I did see that. Very exciting. Yes. So we're trying to set that up, but we need participation. So we're looking for about 8 people. And again, not a huge time commitment, but I think very valuable feedback. And again, it helps us build a better plan. So let me know if you're interested. And with that, thank you. Thank you so much for attending, especially on a beautiful day. So we really appreciate it. And if there's any other questions, we'll stick around for a little while. We have business cards in the back. And if you think of something when you go home, shoot us an email. So thank you so much. Yeah, thanks.